The rain came down like a punishment from heaven itself. Seren Whitmore pressed her back against the crumbling stone wall of an abandoned shepherd's hut, her traveling cloak soaked through to her chemise beneath. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty moorland in harsh white flashes, and thunder rolled across the hills with a violence that vibrated through her very bones. She was going to die out here. The thought arrived with strange calm, almost like relief. After everything that had happened in the last 12 hours, perhaps dying in a storm on the Yorkshire moors was simply the universe completing what it had started. 23 years old, unmarried, ruined, and now, apparently, about to freeze to death in the middle of nowhere. Her mind drifted back to that morning, when everything had still made sense, when she had still been Miss Seren Whitmore, respectable daughter of a respectable family, engaged to Lord Bertram Huxley, the third son of the Earl of Crestwood. The memory surfaced like bile. Bertram's study, the door slightly ajar, his voice and another voice beneath it, softer, feminine, laughing. Serene had pushed the door open without thinking. Bertram with Lady Venetia Croft in his lap, his hands where they should never have been, both of them looking up at Seren with expressions that held no shame whatsoever, only irritation at being interrupted. "Do knock next time, darling," Bertram had said casually. "Venetia and I were just discussing arrangements." "Arrangements," Seren had repeated. "For after we're married, of course. Surely you didn't think I'd give up my amusements simply because I'm taking a wife." Something inside Seren had broken, not her heart. Something else. Something that had been holding her in place her entire life. She had removed her engagement ring and placed it on his desk. "Then I'm afraid there won't be a wedding." Bertram's face had transformed from amusement to fury. He'd advanced on her with a coldness she had never seen before. "You think you can refuse me? I am the best offer you will ever receive. Without me, you are nothing." "Then I shall be nothing with dignity." The slap had sent her reeling. She'd tasted blood, felt the sting across her cheek. "Get out," he'd snarled. "I'll make sure every drawing room in England knows what you are." And just like that, Seren Whitmore had become homeless. She couldn't return to her family's estate. Her father would have forced her back into the engagement. So she had taken the small amount of money in her reticule, boarded a mail coach heading north, and fled. Now here she was, soaked, frozen, lost on the moors with the storm showing no signs of abating. The hut offered no real shelter. The roof had collapsed years ago. The wind cut through the gaps like knives. "Just close your eyes," a treacherous voice whispered. "Just rest for a moment." She knew what that meant. Closing her eyes in this cold meant never opening them again. A flash of lightning illuminated the moorland road below. Lights, carriage lights, swaying through the darkness. Someone was traveling through this storm. Seren pushed herself upright, her frozen limbs screaming in protest. If she could reach the road, perhaps. But even as she stumbled forward, a warning whispered in her mind. Who travels these moors at night in a storm like this? What kind of person would stop for a bedraggled woman alone in the darkness? The carriage lights drew closer. She could hear the thunder of hooves now. She had seconds to decide. Hide, and likely die of exposure before morning, or step into the road and take her chances. Lightning flashed again, black lacquered wood, 4 horses, a crest on the door. Nobility. The carriage was almost upon her. Seren made her choice. She stumbled into the road, just as the carriage thundered past. For one horrible moment, Seren thought they hadn't seen her, that she would be left standing in the mud while the lights disappeared into the storm. But then she heard it. The driver's shout, the scream of horses being reined in hard. The carriage skidded to a halt some 30 yards ahead. A figure emerged from the carriage door, tall, broad-shouldered, moving toward her with purpose despite the howling wind. Are you injured?" The voice cut through the storm, deep, commanding. Seren tried to speak, but her frozen jaw wouldn't cooperate. The figure reached her. Lightning flashed, and she saw his face, younger than she expected. Early 30s. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, sharp features, eyes that evaluated her with unsettling intensity. Good God. His voice lost some of its coldness. "How long have you been out here?" "I don't know." "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Then come, quickly." He shrugged off his greatcoat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The wool was warm from his body. "My estate is 20 minutes from here. I can't impose on a stranger. You can die of exposure, or you can accept help. Those are your options." His tone left no room for argument. "I am Draven Alcott. Whatever else I may be, I am not in the habit of leaving women to freeze to death." Draven Alcott, the Duke of Thornwood, one of the wealthiest men in England, known for his reclusiveness, his sharp tongue, and his absolute refusal to participate in society. "Your Grace," Seren managed. Something flickered across his face. "You know me?" "By reputation only." "Ah, then you know I'm a monster who devours innocent maidens for breakfast." He gestured toward the carriage. "Now, unless you have a pressing appointment elsewhere on the moors, might I suggest we continue this conversation somewhere drier?" Seren stared at him, this dark stranger with his sardonic words and unexpected coat of kindness. Every instinct screamed that this was improper, dangerous, but her reputation was already in tatters, and the alternative was death. "Very well," she whispered. The interior was warm. A small brazier glowed in one corner. Seren collapsed onto the velvet seat, shaking violently. In the dim light, the Duke studied her. "You're not dressed for traveling." "No. And that bruise on your face is fresh." Seren's hand flew to her cheek. "You're running from something," he continued. "Does it matter?" "That depends entirely on what you're running from." Seren looked at this stranger who had pulled her from the storm. "I'm no one," she said quietly. "Absolutely no one at all." The Duke regarded her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "How intriguing. In my experience, people who claim to be no one are usually the most interesting of all." The carriage rattled on through the storm. Thornwood Manor emerged from the darkness, like something out of a Gothic novel. Towers and turrets, endless windows glowing with candlelight, ivy crawling up stone walls older than the country itself. "Welcome to Thornwood," the Duke said dryly. "Try not to look so horrified." The next hour passed in a blur. Seren was whisked inside by an efficient housekeeper named Mrs. Bridger, stripped of her ruined clothes, and deposited in a steaming bath. Clean nightclothes appeared. A room was prepared. A tray arrived bearing hot soup and tea. She fell asleep before she could process the day's events. Morning arrived gray and drizzling. A knock at the door made her sit up. "His Grace requests the pleasure of your company for breakfast," Mrs. Bridger announced, carrying a bundle of fabric. "This dress belonged to His Grace's late sister." Late sister. Another piece of the puzzle. The breakfast room was bright despite the weather. The Duke was already seated, newspaper in hand. He looked different in daylight, less forbidding, also exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes. "Miss Whitmore, I trust you slept well." "Very well. Your hospitality has been more than generous." "My hospitality has been basic decency." He folded the newspaper. "Now, I believe we have matters to discuss." Seren's stomach clenched. "Let me be direct. You arrived last night in considerable distress, bearing marks of violence with no escort. You are clearly well-born and clearly fleeing something. Before I can assist you, I need the truth." "I was engaged," Seren heard herself say, "until yesterday. I discovered my fiancé in a compromising position. When I ended the engagement, he made his displeasure clear." The Duke's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. "He struck you." Yes. And cast you out? Yes. Lord Huxley. The Duke's voice turned to ice. Bertram Huxley? You know him? I know of him. The man is a scoundrel. You're well rid of him. Perhaps. But being well rid of him doesn't change my situation. I have no money, no connections. My reputation is destroyed. I have a proposition for you, Miss Whitmore, one that may benefit us both. Everything in Saren went still. What kind of proposition? The respectable kind. His lips quirked. Are you aware why I am considered the most unmarriageable duke in England? I've heard rumors. Allow me to provide facts. 3 years ago I was engaged to Lady Rowena Ashworth. 2 weeks before the wedding, she eloped with my younger brother. Seren's breath caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. But the scandal made me a figure of ridicule. Since then, every ambitious mother makes it her mission to throw daughters at my head. I fail to see how I factor into this. I need someone to pose as my intended for the duration of the season. Someone who will accompany me to social functions and deflect the marriage-minded harpies. Seren stared at him. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? For 2 months, after which we announce a mutual dissolution. You will emerge with your reputation enhanced. The woman who captured and released the Duke of Thornwood will be the most intriguing figure in society. And in exchange, suitable accommodation, an appropriate wardrobe, a generous allowance, and at the end, a settlement sufficient to establish you independently. Why me? You could hire any actress. Actresses talk. You have something more valuable, motivation. You need this arrangement as much as I do. Seren's hands trembled. This was madness. But madness was the only path left to her. If I agree, there will be conditions. Name them. This remains strictly business, no expectations beyond public performance. Agreed. I will need to contact my family. Naturally. And if you wish to end the engagement early, you do so without damaging my reputation. You have my word. Seren drew a deep breath. Then I accept your proposition, your grace. Draven, he corrected. If we're engaged, you should use my given name. Draven. She tested the word. And you should call me Seren. Seren? He extended his hand. Welcome to Thornwood, my false fiancé. The next 2 months are going to be extraordinarily interesting. She took his hand. His grip was warm, firm, strangely reassuring. And somewhere in her mind, a small voice whispered that she had just made either the best decision of her life or the most catastrophic mistake imaginable. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Seren learned quickly that the Duke ran his household with military precision. Breakfast at 8, correspondence by 9. Estate business occupied mornings. Afternoons were devoted to what he vaguely termed my work. She also learned that the staff adored him. He's not what people say, miss, Mrs. Bridger confided. The world sees the mask. We see the man beneath. And what is the man beneath? Mrs. Bridger's hand stilled. Lonely. Terribly lonely. Though he'd sooner die than admit it. The words stayed with Seren as she dressed for dinner in a borrowed burgundy gown. She found Draven in the drawing room, staring into the fire with an unreadable expression. He turned when she entered, and something crossed his face. Surprise, perhaps. You look suitable. How flattering. I meant it as a compliment. The burgundy suits you. Your sister. Seren moved to accept the sherry he poured. Mrs. Bridger mentioned she passed away. 3 years ago, consumption. She was 22. I'm sorry. As am I. He gestured toward the settee. Shall we? We have arrangements to discuss. They settled across from each other. The London season begins in 2 weeks, Draven said. We'll depart in 3 days, which gives us time to establish our story. What story have you decided upon? The truth, mostly. We met during the storm. I offered shelter. During your stay, we discovered mutual affinity. And my broken engagement? We address it directly. You discovered Lord Huxley's infidelity and ended the engagement. I offered protection. Over time, protection became something more. His gaze met hers. Society loves a redemption story. What do I need to know about you? The small details that convince people we actually know each other. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. Coffee black, no sugar. I despise tea unless ill. I read philosophy before bed. I'm left-handed, though forced to write with my right as a child. I cannot abide roses since my mother's funeral, and I have a scar on my left shoulder from a riding accident. Your turn, he said. Tea with honey. I read novels rather than philosophy. I'm terrified of heights, but fascinated by astronomy. I sing tolerably, but have no skill with instruments. I bite my thumbnail when anxious. Droven's expression remained carefully neutral. I suspect no one will be asking about thumbnails, but I appreciate your thoroughness. The awkwardness broke into unexpected laughter. You should do that more often, he said quietly. Do what? Laugh. It transforms you? Dinner was excellent, though Seren barely tasted it. She was too busy cataloging information. He hated his middle name, Percival. He'd wanted to be a scholar before his father's death thrust him into the dukedom. And his brother Edmund, who had eloped with his fiancée, had died 6 months ago abroad. Neither he nor the former Lady Rowena had attempted contact before the death. You don't speak of him, Seren observed. There's nothing to say. Edmund made his choices. There was pain beneath the coldness, deep, old pain. As they parted for the evening, Seren caught him glancing at a portrait in the corridor. 2 young boys, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning with identical mischief. The brother he remembered from childhood. The stranger his brother had become. London arrived like an assault on the senses. After Thornwood's isolation, the city's chaos felt violent. Carriages clogged every street. The air smelled of coal smoke and horse manure. Their first test came sooner than expected. The Marchioness of Pemberton is hosting a ball tomorrow evening, Draven announced at breakfast. Tomorrow? We've barely settled in. Lady Pemberton is the worst gossip in London. Whatever she witnesses will be repeated everywhere by week's end. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. A modiste arrived, a hairdresser, a jeweler with pieces from the Thornwood collection. The sapphires, I think, Draven said, studying her in the gold gown. They'll complement your eyes. My eyes are gray, with hints of blue. Trust me. That evening, standing before the mirror, Seren barely recognized herself. Elegant, confident. The illusion was almost convincing. You look terrified, Draven observed when she descended. I am terrified. Good. Terror keeps one sharp. He offered his arm. Remember, you're about to become the most talked about woman in London. The Pemberton ballroom was a crush of humanity. Everywhere, eyes turned to watch as the Duke of Thornwood entered with an unknown woman. The whispers started immediately. Who is she? Is that a Thornwood sapphire? Draven guided her through the crowd, his hand covering hers on his arm. Breathe, he murmured. You're doing beautifully. A formidable woman in purple silk descended upon them. Thornwood! You actually came, and with a guest. Lady Pemberton, may I present Miss Seren Whitmore, my fiancée? The word dropped like a stone into still water. Gasps, whispers, fans raised to hide moving lips. Your fiancée, Lady Pemberton repeated. How extraordinary. Miss Whitmore proved persuasive, Draven said. Seren felt 100 gazes pressing upon her, but she smiled. His grace is too modest. I merely suggested perpetual bachelorhood seemed lonely. He agreed. Lady Pemberton laughed. Wit as well as beauty. You've chosen well, Thornwood. The next hour was an endless parade of introductions and barely concealed interrogations. You're a natural, Draven murmured during a brief respite. I'm an excellent liar. In society, it's a survival skill. Then the music changed. We should dance, he said. It's expected. I thought you despised dancing. I despise dancing with simpering debutantes. You, however, are neither. He extended his hand. Shall we? The waltz was intimate, his hand at her waist, their bodies closer than propriety normally allowed. People are watching, Seren whispered. Let them watch. They're going to wonder why a duke chose a nobody. They're going to wonder how a nobody captured a duke. His eyes met hers. And you're not a nobody, Seren. You never were. Something fluttered beneath her ribs. Dangerous, she reminded herself. But as the music swelled, she found it increasingly difficult to remember that. 3 weeks into the season, Seren had become exactly what Drevin predicted. The most talked about woman in London. Invitations flooded the townhouse. Fashion plates praised her style. Everywhere, whispers followed. The woman who captured Thornwood. The only place she could truly breathe was Thornwood House itself. She and Draven had fallen into an unexpected routine. Breakfasts together, afternoons apart. Evenings varied between public engagements and quiet hours at home. It was the quiet hours she treasured most. You're doing it again, Draven observed one evening. Doing what? Biting your thumbnail. Seren snatched her hand away. I wasn't aware I was being observed. I'm always observing. It's a character flaw. He set aside his papers. What's troubling you? I received a letter from my sister today. Marjorie. She's 15. And she writes that my father has forbidden anyone from speaking my name. That my mother cries herself to sleep. That Lord Huxley's family is demanding reparations. Seren's voice caught. She begged me to come home, to apologize. And what did you tell her? I haven't responded. How do I explain that I can't apologize for refusing to marry a man who struck me? You don't explain. Not to a 15-year-old who can't understand. Draven leaned forward. You tell her you're safe. You tell her you love her. And you tell her that sometimes doing the right thing looks wrong to everyone else. That's surprisingly wise. I have occasional moments. Don't spread it around. Despite herself, Seren laughed. For what it's worth, he said quietly. You made the right choice. It took courage. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like survival. Sometimes indistinguishable. May I ask you something? She said. You may ask. I reserve the right not to answer. Your brother Edmund. Do you ever regret not reconciling before he died? The silence stretched long. Then, every day, the word emerged rough, stripped of polish. I tell myself I made the right choice. He betrayed me. He never apologized. But he was my brother, and I let him go without ever telling him that I forgave him. Did you? Forgive him? I don't know. Some days I think I did. Other days that I'm still so angry I can barely breathe. His eyes met hers, raw and unguarded. And now, I'll never know. Seren moved without thinking. She crossed the space and sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, she said softly. It's a choice we make over and over. Some days we succeed, some days we don't. That doesn't mean we've failed. It means we're human. Droven turned to look at her. How did you become so wise? He asked. I'm just familiar with complicated feelings toward family. They sat in silence, the fire crackling softly. This wasn't supposed to happen, Draven said finally. What wasn't? This, he gestured between them. Actually connecting. Is that a problem? It complicates things. Life is complicated, he laughed, warmer than his usual sardonic chuckle. When their eyes met again, something had shifted. Something dangerous. I should retire, Seren said, rising abruptly. Of course. Sleep well, Seren. Good night, Draven. But as she climbed the stairs, her pulse was racing. 3 weeks ago, she had agreed to a business arrangement. She hadn't agreed to actually feel anything, and yet here she was, feelings blooming like unwanted flowers. This was dangerous. This was foolish. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Seren found herself replaying the way Draven had looked at her when his walls finally cracked, and she wondered if her own walls were cracking too. 6 weeks into their arrangement, Seren realized she had stopped counting the days until it ended. This troubled her more than she cared to admit. It showed in small ways. The morning Draven appeared at breakfast with an astronomy book he'd found near Parliament. "You mentioned you were fascinated by the stars," he'd said gruffly. The afternoon she'd discovered him in the garden, coatless, helping Cormac plant roses. "Don't tell anyone. I'm supposed to be unapproachable." The evening they'd stayed up until 3 debating free will, and she'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. She'd woken to find a blanket draped over her. He never mentioned it. Neither did she. The Harrington Music Hall was supposed to be a minor event. Instead, she found herself cornered by the last person she wanted to see. "Miss Whitmore." The voice sent ice through her veins. Lord Bertram Huxley stood before her, champagne in hand. "Lord Huxley, I wasn't aware you were in London. Arrived yesterday. Imagine my surprise when I heard you'd captured the Duke of Thornwood." His eyes traveled over her. "You've done well. Though I wonder if the Duke knows what he's getting. And what precisely would that be? A woman of questionable loyalty." He stepped closer. "I wonder what Thornwood would say if he knew the real reason you ended our engagement, that you were jealous, hysterical." "Seren." Draven's voice cut through like a blade. He appeared at her side, hand at her back. His expression was pleasant, but his eyes were ice. "Huxley, I don't believe we've been introduced, though I've certainly heard your name." Bertram's smile faltered. "Your Grace, I was just renewing my acquaintance with Miss Whitmore." "How fortunate. Now, if you'll excuse us." As Draven guided her away, Seren realized she was shaking. They found a quiet alcove. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing of consequence." "Seren, tell me." She told him. The insinuations, the threats. His jaw tightened with each word. "He's a coward," he said. "Whatever poison he spreads won't touch you. I won't allow it. You can't protect me from gossip. Watch me." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Why do you care so much? This is supposed to be an arrangement." Draven was silent. Then he reached out and cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Because it stopped being an arrangement weeks ago," he said quietly. "At least for me." Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Draven, I know this complicates everything, but I cannot watch that man look at you like property and feel nothing." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between the storm and this moment, I started to care about you. Not as a co-conspirator, as a person, as a woman, as someone I—" He trailed off. "We should return to the party," he said abruptly. "People will notice." "Draven, wait!" But he was already walking away. As someone I what? The question haunted her for the rest of the evening. 3 days later, Draven took her to the opera. The performance was Verdi, passionate, tragic, entirely too resonant with her emotional state. During the interval, they remained in the box. "You've been avoiding me," Draven said quietly. "I've been present at every event. Physically present, emotionally absent. I've been thinking. About you. About us. About wanting something I'm not supposed to have. About what happens when this ends," she said instead. "It doesn't have to end." The words hung between them. "What do you mean?" Draven took a breath. "I've spent 3 days trying to convince myself what I feel is merely fondness, gratitude for a useful alliance." His eyes met hers. "I've failed spectacularly." "Draven, let me finish. I know this wasn't the arrangement, but somewhere along the way, you became someone I think about when I wake. Someone I look for in every room. Someone whose laugh I would spend the rest of my life trying to provoke, he swallowed. I'm falling in love with you, Seren. Perhaps I've already fallen. Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. This was everything she wanted, everything she was terrified of. I can't, she whispered. Can't what? I can't trust it. You gave me everything. How do I know what I feel is real and not just gratitude, dependency? Because I know myself. Do you? She stood, moving to the edge of the box. I thought I knew myself when I agreed to marry Bertram. It wasn't love. It was desperation and wishful thinking. I'm not Bertram. No. You're infinitely better. She turned to face him. Which is exactly why I can't risk destroying this by confusing gratitude for love. The pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. So, what are you proposing? We finish what we started. 2 more weeks. Then we dissolve the engagement and see if what we feel survives separation. Draven was silent. Then he nodded. 2 weeks. And then we'll see. When they returned home, he paused at her door. For the record, he said quietly, I already know what I feel will survive. I intend to spend the rest of my life proving I know my own heart. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Good night, Seren. Then he was gone, and she was left with the terrifying knowledge that she had fallen in love with him too. But fear could be stronger than love, at least for now. The letter arrived 5 days before the season's end, her mother's handwriting, shaky with emotion. My dearest Seren, your father's creditors have called in all debts. We have until month's end to pay, or we lose everything. Lord Huxley has offered a solution. He will forgive all debts if you return to him. I know what I am asking. But your sister's futures hang in the balance. Please consider. Your loving mother, Seren, read it 3 times. Bertram. Always Bertram. He had waited until she believed herself safe, then struck. Not at her directly, but at her family. Return to him, or watch them destroyed. Draven found her in the morning room, letter clutched in her hands. What's happened? She handed him the letter. His expression darkened as he read. The calculating bastard. He orchestrated this. Yes. You're not actually considering going back. Silence. Seren. He knelt before her. You cannot go back to a man who struck you. Whatever debts hang over them, we can find another way. What other way? Let me pay the debts. Free your family from Huxley's trap. And put them in debt to you instead? It wouldn't be a debt. It would be a gift. There's no such thing as a gift without strings. Then let me put strings on it. His eyes burned. Marry me. Truly, marry me. Let me save your family and make you my wife. Everything she wanted, offered freely, and everything she feared. I can't let you save my family, only to wonder forever if I married you out of love or desperation. And if Huxley destroys your family while you're figuring that out, then that's the price of certainty. Draven stood abruptly. This is absurd. Absolutely, impossibly absurd. I would sacrifice everything to ensure that whatever I choose freely. Fear crossed his features. Then at least let me deal with Huxley. Give me 3 days. What are you going to do? Something I should have done the moment I saw that bruise on your face. He was gone before she could respond. 2 days later, Lord Bertram Huxley publicly withdrew his suit against the Whitmore family. All debts forgiven. The papers reported Lord Huxley had decided to travel abroad, perhaps several years. His departure was described as unexpected. Draven said nothing, but Seren saw the bruises on his knuckles, hastily covered with gloves. What did you do? Had a conversation. Draven. I visited Huxley at his club, informed him that if he ever again attempted to contact you or your family, I would destroy him. Financially. Personally. Completely. His voice was matter of fact. I also mentioned documented evidence of his treatment of you. Should it become public, his reputation would be irreparably damaged. You threatened him. I educated him about consequences. The bruises suggest the education was physical. He required emphasis. Seren stared at him. You shouldn't have done that. Your family is safe, permanently. His expression was fierce. Whatever you decide about us, Huxley can never touch them again. You freed my family so I could choose freely? Isn't that what you wanted? Tears prickled behind her eyes. You impossible man, she whispered. I prefer extraordinarily dedicated. A laugh escaped her, half-sob. The season ends tomorrow, he said quietly. I've had my solicitor prepare the settlement we agreed upon. And if I don't want the settlement? His breath caught. Then what do you want? Seren rose and crossed to where he sat. She took his hand, fingers tracing his bruised knuckles. When you went to Huxley, what were you thinking? That no one should ever make you feel afraid again. What else? That I would burn down the entire world to keep you safe. What else? He looked up at her. That I love you, and that even if you never loved me back, protecting you would still be the best thing I ever did. She sank to her knees before him. I want you, she whispered. I want mornings arguing over coffee, evenings debating philosophy. I want to make you laugh. I want to hold you when you're sad. I want a lifetime of discovering who we are together. Is that a yes? That's a yes. To everything. To you, Draven Alcott. He kissed her. Not gentle or careful. Consuming. Desperate. The release of weeks of restraint. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me. For real this time. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times. Yes. They married 3 weeks later in the chapel at Thornwood Manor. Not the grand society wedding everyone expected. Something better. Something real. Seren walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her mother weeping, her sister Marjorie serving as attendant. Draven waited at the altar, looking nervous. You came, he whispered. Did you doubt I would? I doubted my own fortune, never you. Traditional vows, spoken with trembling voices. When the vicar pronounced them, husband and wife, Draven kissed her with tenderness that made her ache. That evening, he led her to the library. I have something for you. He pressed a document into her hands. A property deed, for the Whitmore family estate. I purchased it from your father's creditors months ago, he said. The debts were always going to be forgiven. Your family was never truly in danger. But the letter from my mother, Huxley's manipulation, he assumed the worst, not knowing I'd already resolved the situation. Draven took her hands. I wanted you to choose me freely. You let me agonize for days. I needed to know when you said yes, you meant it. She threw her arms around him. I love you, Draven Alcott, even when you drive me insane. Good, because I intend to drive you insane for the rest of our lives. The gardens at Thornwood Manor were in full summer bloom. Seren sat beneath the old oak tree, watching her husband teach their 3-year-old son Marcus to identify clouds. That one looks like a dragon, Marcus insisted. Definitely a dragon, Draven agreed solemnly. From her lap, baby Isolde gurgled, waving tiny fists at the light filtering through leaves. Your daughter is plotting something, Seren called. She's only mine when she's difficult. Later, after the children slept, they sat together in the library. Do you ever think about it? She asked. How different things might have been if you hadn't stopped that night. Never. Stopping was never a choice. His arm tightened around her. The moment I saw you, I knew my life was about to change. She smiled, looking around the library they'd made their own. A life built from an unlikely beginning. A love forged in a storm. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For stopping. For taking a chance. For being stubborn enough to wait until I figured out my own heart. "Thank you for figuring it out," he replied. "Eventually." She laughed, and he kissed her. Outside, stars wheeled overhead as they had for centuries. Some stories begin with once upon a time. Theirs had begun with a storm, a stopped carriage, and a proposition that had seemed like madness. But madness, Serene had learned, was sometimes just another word for exactly right. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this journey through storms and starlight, through fear and finally love. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it with fellow lovers of romantic tales. Your support keeps our little storytelling corner alive and thriving. Stay tuned. Another emotional story is waiting for you at the end of this video. Click, listen, and let your heart be swept away once more. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here.